US team is obviously a team that is an attacking team, and you don't want it, and that's one of the great strengths, and you don't want to take that away. So there's probably just some slight differences in the coaching of that. But again, philosophically, we're probably on the same. Yeah, the game is, but I think the US team gets a raw deal in that regard. People talk about the power, the competitiveness, the fitness, etc. But if you look, particularly from midfield forward, if you look at the quality of players in this team, there's some outstanding players in this team. They just don't get credited with the ability that they have. So I suppose part of my job is to bring that out a little bit more and get it hopefully more appreciated by the soccer public and by other soccer countries. But and we are working our way at improving. There are some things that we need to do a little bit better, as in we're always going to play the game at a fast tempo, but there's some times when we need to slow that tempo down a little bit, play just a little bit more controlled. So we are working away at those kind of things. It's not been too hard, to be honest, till now. It's been a fairly easy progression, to be honest, and they've come in and they've done very well. I'd heard stories about how difficult it was for young players at times to come into this environment. But to be honest, I've seen the opposite. The senior players have been extremely welcoming and supportive. The young players that have come in, I think what you've got to remember now is that young players the women's game's moved on very quickly in the last even 4 years, but certainly in the last 10 years. So these young players that are coming in now have been in a national team structure since they were 17 and 18. They played in World Cups at under 17 level, under 20 level. So they're not just suddenly coming in raw out of college and only watched Abby Wambach on TV and been in awe of these senior players. So they played the game at a high level, so they come in with a great deal of their own confidence, and they're very good players. The development system here has helped develop better players at a younger age. So they've come in and they've fitted in extremely well and added to the competitiveness of the squad. I mean, ultimately, age doesn't come into it. I've stated this before, but people have talked to me about this being an aging team. The reality is you get picked on performance. So if you're in first year at college, or if somebody walks from somewhere from the middle of Idaho, hope I've not upset anybody from Idaho, at 16 and is a superstar, then they get in the team. Team is based on performance at this level. So whether you're the first year at college, fourth year at college, or whatever, if you're good enough to get in the team, you get in the team. And part of the thing that is important to create is competitiveness within any squad, so that no player is really completely comfortable that they're a walk-up start. And we're very fortunate in the sense that we've got a really competitive squad right across the board here. So it's just continue to do that, and obviously as things move on, teams change. The team that's going to go out in 2015 isn't going to be the same team that went out in 2011. How much change, I don't know, but there's always change and there's always evolution. It's a plus, and it's like most things, there's a plus and a minus to it. I think it's a great thing that US players have started to go overseas. It's got them outside the comfort zone. It's got them playing a different style of soccer, different style of coaching, living away from home, going through things that off the field that they don't have to go through when they're staying here. Obviously the downside is that they're not in front of you week in and week out, that you don't quite know how they're progressing, how they're doing. It's much more difficult to get them over for camps and for games. So there's pros and there's cons to players being overseas, but with there being a lack of a viable national league for a little while, I think it's been a really progressive step for players to then say, I want to still play soccer at the highest level, and the place I can do that is Europe, and they've gone and done that. Hopefully with the league here now starting up again, that will keep improving that, and that will encourage more players to stay. Well, it's difficult. You just have to go. At some stage, it's twofold. There's a few things you do. Firstly, we've had some camps in Europe this year, so we've brought some players in to have a look at them. Secondly, at some stage, I'm probably going to have to go off and do the tour around, get the car out and give it, get the combi van out and the bed in the back, and travel around. And thirdly, it's just hearing through the grapevine how players are doing, and then when you get an opportunity, inviting them in to train with the squad. It's been very valuable. I've noticed that when they've come into this camp, they've suddenly played a living 9, 10, 11 competitive game. in that week in and week out soccer training, it has really been beneficial from my perspective, and certainly from the players coming in and their level of match fitness. There's a few players I've seen, and as we've gradually got to see more and more games, you start to get to know the players a little bit more. It wouldn't be wise of me at the moment to mention players, because I suddenly mention a player and something happens, and you know, it's not fair on the player as well. But there have been a few players that have kind of caught my eye, and that at some stage, you know, we're hoping to have a look at, you know, whether we kind of organise a camp and bring some players in and see how they go in amongst this squad. You know, the difficult thing is that this is it's a very competitive squad, you know, so you really need to stand out, you need to stand out consistently. So the key thing for me going out to the NWSL games is to see players that, you know, after 15, 16, 17 games are still performing at a high level and still performing consistently. But there are certainly some players out there who, you know, to be honest, with most other national teams would be a walk-up start. I was saying earlier, I thought probably next to Japan are technically the most gifted team in the world. And they've worked extremely hard over the last 3 or 4 years. Coming from Australia, we've played them a lot of times over the last few years. They've worked extremely hard with their youth setup, done extremely well at under 17 and under 20 level. They've got a very young national team, and they've worked on the structure and improved greatly over that last 3 or 4 years. So there'll be a technical challenge, there'll be a very disciplined team. Like most Asian teams, they seem to have the ability to outnumber you wherever you have the ball on the soccer field, so we need to deal with that challenge. And we need to also deal with the slightly different way and different tempo that they play at compared to the Western teams that we've been used to playing this year.